Good evening. It is 8 o'clock, Tuesday school. We are glad you are here. We get to talk about Jude today. Let me pray for us. Thanks, Father, for another opportunity to hang out with friends, family, and to look at your word. I pray that you would illumine it for us, reveal what you want us to know, help us to understand these academic issues, intellectual issues, but as we leave or even here together, to also see how this points to you, how we are called to be in this new kingdom, this new world that you've created for us. So be with us as we talk. Keep us humble and open to one another's views and thinking, uh, and help us also have a good time. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, we are in Jude chapter 1. We are never going to leave Jude chapter 1, which at this point you better figure out why without too much difficulty. All right. I'm going to read the first 4 verses, and then actually I'll probably read the first 5 verses, and then verse 6 is where we're going to dwell today. We started verse 6 last week, or 2 weeks ago, before I had to jump in and do that Ezekiel 38 and 39 Gog and Magog thing. Hopefully some of you were there for it. It was fun. But I wanted to jump back and do verse 6 again because I feel like I assumed a lot from you, and I was told that I assumed a lot from you, like that you had a clue what was going on in Genesis, and that it's not just about Jude. So I want to go back and we'll look at the whole thing and take our time. We're not in a hurry, so it's okay. So let's go back and look at that. So here's how it starts. Jude, a servant of God, a servant of Jesus Christ and brother of James, to those who are called, who are beloved in God the Father and kept safe for Jesus Christ, may mercy, peace, and love be yours in abundance. With these things, we took a couple of weeks to talk about these things. We talked about Jude being a servant of Jesus Christ and a brother of James. We said the traditional view was that Jude might be the brother of Jesus. He could be that brother of James and Jesus. We don't know scholarly consensus, or there isn't scholarly consensus, but it just depends on who you are. Evangelicals generally hold this to be that particular person. It doesn't matter. You guys know enough about implied authorship and empirical authorship to know that that's not as important as finding out who he is acting as if he is, what he's trying to get across. So we spent a lot of time talking about being called and beloved in God the Father and kept. And we talked about mercy and grace and mercy, peace, and love in abundance. So verse 3 is who he's writing to. Beloved, while eagerly preparing to write to you about the salvation we share, I find it necessary to write and appeal to you to contend for the faith that was once for all entrusted to the saints. So he wanted to write about one thing. He got stuck. Something else happened. Something in life happened. And he is now forced to write that they contend for the faith. We did the Rocky theme music, right? The eye of the tiger is the eye, right? Contend for the faith. And that's what we were called to do against whoever these people are. Verse 4, for certain intruders have stolen or creeped in among you, people who long ago were designated for this condemnation as ungodly, who pervert the grace of our God into licentiousness and deny our only Master and Lord, Jesus Christ. So we said the main problem, we don't know who these people are, but the main problem seems to be that that they have turned the grace of God into licentiousness, which means that they like God's grace on them, and they thought, okay, well, we can do whatever we want because God's gracious. So there's no law. We don't have to worry about all those things anymore. So that's where we're at. Okay, we call this idea antinomianism. We talked about that last week, right? Or against the law. They don't care about the law, antinomianism. Now, I desire to remind you, verse 5, though you are fully informed that the Lord, who once for all saved a people out of the land of Egypt, afterwards destroyed those who did not believe. Okay, so our structure so far is here's the person who wrote it, here's who it's written to, and why it's being written, antinomianism. Now we're going to give you 3 examples right in a row. The first one is in verse 5. You're fully informed that Yahweh, who once for all saved a people out of the land of Egypt, afterwards destroyed those who did not believe. This is his first illustration he's going to give you. Okay, we talked about that last week in a little bit of detail. Okay, this is the people who were in the wilderness getting ready to go into the promised land, and they came out. They said, "We're not going in there. We're like grasshoppers before them. There's no way we're going into that place." Right? So, and only Joshua and Caleb said, "Yes, let's go in," but they didn't go in, and so they wandered around and they died in the wilderness. So those people who did not trust God's authority, who did not obey the law, who went their own way, died. So there was punishment. So then verse 6, and angels who did not keep their own positions, but left their proper dwelling, he's kept in eternal chains and deepest darkness for the judgment of the great day. Okay, we're all caught up. We know where we're at. Okay, so that's the review in 6 minutes. Now we want to move into this particular story. Where is this found? What is Jude talking about? We're about to get into Sodom and Gomorrah, but we'll wait for that for next week. Who are these angels who didn't keep their own position, but left their proper dwelling and are kept in eternal chains of darkness until that day, for the judgment of the great day? Who are these things? We started to talk about it last week, so you should have some clue already. Maybe.
Genesis 6.
Yeah, I was thinking Genesis 6 too, yeah.
Yep. Genesis 6. Okay, so let's go to Genesis 6 then. Okay? This is what I didn't do. I just kind of assumed you knew Genesis 6 and we just moved on. But let's jump back to Genesis 6 and talk about that for a second, because this is a really freaky, weird passage. Anybody who reads this and doesn't stumble a little bit is obviously missing. They're just reading over it too quickly. There's some weird stuff going on in this passage. So Genesis 6, 1 through, I don't know, how about 4? 1 through 4. Anybody want to read that for us in, I don't know, any decent translation? Hopefully by now you've thrown away the ones that I've ridiculed enough.
Travis has a good Spanish translation.
Yeah, that's going to really helpful to us. Helpful, a few of us probably. All right, so who's got it? Genesis 6, 1 through 4.
I'll do it.
All right, Lori's got it.
All right. When people began to multiply on the face of the ground and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw that they were fair, and they took wives for themselves of all that they chose. Then the Lord said, "My spirit shall not abide in mortals forever, for they are flesh, their days shall be 120 years. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward, when the sons of God went in to the daughters of humans, who bore children to them. These were the heroes that were of old, warriors of renown." That's it.
All right. Host people, Travis and Sarah, can I have the ability to share my screen? I forgot to ask you that before. My apologies. I just tried to do it and I was unable. All right, so here we've got, they're multiplying on the face of the earth, which is what we wanted them to do. Remember Genesis 1 through 5, that's the whole goal, is that they multiply, and they're doing this. And the daughters are born to them, and the sons of God see that these daughters are fair. Or if you want to talk in vernacular, these gals were hot, okay? They wanted them, and it says they took them. Whoever these sons of God are. There's lots of different interpretations to what these sons of God are, but the oldest interpretations are the ones I'm going to share with you today. I'm going to read you a whole bunch of them. So these sons of God take wives for themselves, and then the Lord says, my spirit's not going to abide in mortals forever, only for 120 years. We're not going to talk about that because I don't want to get too deep into Genesis 6. But verse 4 is also, the Nephilim were on the earth in those days, or the Nephal, those who are fallen ones. And the sons of God went into the daughters of humans and bore children to them, and they were the heroes of old, the warriors of renown. But I'll keep reading the superheroes of the time. Okay, so here we got Genesis. Genesis is pretty old, probably. This story is pretty ancient. It's the precursor to what story? What story is coming next, just so we know our context?
The flood.
The flood is coming next. What has just happened in Genesis?
Sorry, I'm muting mute.
What's just happened in Genesis?
People angered God.
Okay. People angered God. All right. Where's that? That's just happened.
Babel.
Okay. Babel's a few chapters later.
It's basically kind of the sons of Adam and the descendants. It's kind of like a time, yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
you have Cain and Abel, and
Right. So we've moved from Adam and Eve, or moved from creation story to Adam and Eve story to the Cain and Abel story, right? To this, what Lori was just saying, this genealogy.
Yeah,
Chapter
I couldn't
5.
think of the word.
This person had this person and these people, and so there's this list of things. And verse 32 of chapter 5, and Noah was 500 years old. Noah became the father of Shem, Ham, and Japheth. All right. And so from there on, these three sons, now they're going to tell you this story before they tell you Noah's story. This little sandwich in here is going to be the impetus where God finally says, I've had enough. I'm going to destroy everything. Right. That's verse 5 and 6, which is probably what Steve was talking about. Right.
And
the Lord
got ahead of myself. Sorry.
Yep. That's okay. I mean, it's right there. The Lord saw the wickedness of humankind was great in the earth, and their hearts were only evil continually. He was sorry he made humankind. It grieved him in his heart. So he said, I'm going to blot out from the earth all the humans I created, people together with animals and creeping things and birds of the air. I'm sorry I made them, but Noah found favor in the sight of the Lord. Okay, we're not going to do all the Genesis exegesis here, but we want to know is how other people understood this text. And what we have in Jude chapter 1, verse 6, is one way that people understood this text.
Is it the Nephilim?
Yes, Nephilim is verse 4.
I'm sorry. Are we talking about 1?
We're talking about 1 through 4. Yeah.
Okay. The Nephilim are that's an odd word.
Yes,
and
it
an
is.
odd people.
Yeah. And has taken quite a lot of weird interpretive journeys. So, because figuring out what they are is very difficult, because the Giborim or the Nephilim or the Anakim, which all have connections in some way, all of these seem to exist both before and after the flood. Okay, which is another reason for you to think of Genesis 6 probably is not what you think it is, a worldwide flood, something else going on there. But we're not talking about historicity, no historiography right now. We just want to look at Jude and how Jude sees this.
so he's saying,
yeah, go ahead, Josh.
so he's saying that these angels did not keep their positions of authority, but abandoned their home, and so they left heaven and to come down. Is this what we're getting at?
Right. So if Jude is referring to Genesis 6, as most people say it is, he's going to interpret those sons of God as angels who did not stay in the heavenly realms, but instead came down and mated with human women. Okay, which is why they're in trouble, why they got in trouble. That is, they're not following the proper authorities. So it looks like Jude's understanding. Is Jude the only one coming up with such things? That's the question. And how is Jude getting this idea from this? Is this how you would have normally taken this? That these weird rogue angels have dismissed themselves out of heaven and ignored God and said, doggone it, we think they're hot. We're not going to listen to God. We're going to do whatever we want. Like, is that how you would have read this?
Enoch has this. Enoch has this in its creation story.
It does. All right. So the question, yes. So let's look at Enoch's story, which we started to do last week. I even read one passage from Enoch, I think. I want to read you a few other ones. I want to share if this worked, share screen. And here we go. Share. Okay. But now I can't see all of you. That stinks. How do I get to see all of you? Let's do this. That's a little better. Okay, can you guys all see the screen
Yes,
Yes.
that I shared with you?
not
Excellent.
all of it,
You can't see all of it, okay?
but that's me. There you go.
All right, so here's First Enoch. I'll talk about this LXX in a second. But you said First Enoch, so I wanted to give you a little bit. So remember what First Enoch is. Remember, the reason we picked the book of Jude is because we went through all the canon. We looked at all these Second Temple books, and we tried to figure out which ones should be canon, which ones we shouldn't. And this First Enoch is one of those that a lot of people canonized. Well, not a lot of people. Some people made it as part of the Bible. And it still exists in certain ones, as you recall. Right, I think one African one has it, and others would consider it part of like the Deuterocanon. I think Orthodoxy considers it part of their Deuterocanon. Okay, so a secondary canon. All of us have secondary canons, whether we want to admit it or not, but theirs is official. Okay, so the first still passage here, this is in chapter 6. And it came to pass, when the children of men had multiplied, in those days were born unto them beautiful and comely daughters. And the angels, the children of heaven, saw and lusted after them, and said to one another, Come, let us choose wives from among the children of men, and beget us children. Okay, so this version, Enoch, we don't know exactly when it's written. We know that this version is pre-Christian. It could be pre-Maccabean, so a few hundred years before Jesus. It may be 2nd century. Whatever, it's a couple hundred years anyway, probably before any of the New Testament books are being written. Okay, so this interpretation exists for a couple hundred years before Jude is going to come in. And you can see it. The angels, the children of heaven, lusted after them and said, let's take wives and make children. And here's another passage from 1 Enoch 10, 4 through 6. So this is a few chapters later. Bind Azazel. Azazel is one of these bad demon, these angels that have transgressed the boundaries. Bind Azazel hand and foot and cast him into darkness, and make an opening in the desert, which is in Dudael, and cast him therein, and place upon him rough and jagged rocks, and cover him with darkness, and let him abide there forever, and cover his face that he may not see light. And on the great day of judgment, he shall be cast into fire. Okay, so now hold on to that idea, because remember, we've got angels being thrown into hell. That's coming, right? In a few verses. We've got this covering him in darkness, or in a pit, and abiding there. So all this stuff is in Jude as well. And here's this last little passage here, just a few verses later. By Semjaza and his associates, again, demons, have united themselves with women, so as to have defiled themselves with them in all their uncleanness. And when their sons, the giants, have slain one another, and they have seen the destruction of their beloved ones, bind them fast for 70 generations in the valleys of the earth, till the day of their judgment and of the consummation, till the judgment that is forever and ever is consummated. Okay, so does this sound anything like Jude? You might have to jump back to Jude.
It sounds
Yeah.
just like it. It's like, yeah, it's just like it.
So who's being bound, the sons or the angels? Not
Yeah, that's a good question. Semjaza is one of the angels. And so is Azazel. These are demons.
okay.
So these are not the giants. But the second passage here, you know what? Let me. And when their sons have slain one another, and they've seen the destruction of their beloved ones, bind them fast for 70 generations in the valleys of the earth. So, you know what? I'm not 100% sure. That could really be either one. I have to go back and read Enoch in more depth. But if it fits with all of the other ones, it's the angels that have transgressed the boundaries that are being bound, not these giants, or the Nephilim, or the Anakim, or the Gibberim, right?
Yeah, because in Genesis 6, the children were heroes.
Right, sons of renown.
Yeah.
Yep. Warriors of renown. They were the heroes of old. Yep, but they're not always.
They were also in the land of Canaan.
Yeah, I was going
right.
to say this is allegedly an old Canaanite myth and a creation myth. This just portion of Genesis 6.
Yep, some people would say. So this is comes. Remember, all of our mythology is coming out of Canaanite, right?
Okay.
So because the Hebrews are coming out of Canaan. Well, yeah, I don't really want to get into that discussion. So,
But
yes,
it says in Numbers that they called them, they saw the Nephilim, the Israelites when they went, that alludes back to what he was talking about when the spies went in, and that's what they saw, were the Nephilim.
right,
I
which
know
is one verse
I'm
earlier.
going down a rabbit trail. I'm sorry.
No, you're not, because this is what Jude said just one verse earlier, right? That's what Jude was
Yes.
talking about.
Yeah.
So there are connections being made here.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Right.
Yep, that's exactly right. So verse 5, that the Lord once saved a people out of the land of Egypt, afterwards destroyed those who did not believe. The ones who didn't believe are the ones who saw the Nephilim and said, "We are grasshoppers in their sight."
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So these are the Nephilim. So now Nephilim, we don't know what that means. The word Nephal just means fall, but people have made all kinds of different arguments for it. But the Septuagint, so let's just go up here, right? The Septuagint, that's LXX there. You remember that from our other conversations. The Septuagint is, we don't know if it's older or younger than First Enoch, because we don't know exactly when Enoch is. But this is, Septuagint is like middle of the 3rd century, just to remind you, because it's been, 10 weeks since we've been talking about the Septuagint or something like that. So it's the middle of the 3rd century. So think 200s, somewhere in the 200s. And they quote, I'm not going to read anything. You can see I didn't put anything there. They are the ones who changed the word sons of God, which is in Hebrew, right? B'nai Elohim in Hebrew. They made it Greek. That's what the Septuagint is, the Greek version of the Old Testament. When they made it Greek, they used the word angelos in Greek, which is the word angels. Now, angels in the Old Testament might be supernatural, or they might be not supernatural. I don't like to say natural, it's weird. But they might not be, they're supernatural or not supernatural. So angels can be messengers, just people who come and bring these things. But more often than not, when we get into the New Testament period, that word angels is usually referring to these celestial creatures. Okay. In fact, we don't have a lot of words. We don't have the word. I know this is complicated, so just think about this with me. There is no word angels in the Old Testament because they're not speaking Greek, right? So there is the word malachim, which is a word for messengers or maybe angels. So those are like subservient gods. They're next level down. You've got the Elohim up here, and then you've got the malachim are the ones who run, who send messages to people from the gods, the Elohim. So this is the B'nai Elohim, sons of God, who are intermarrying or raping or whatever you want to say, these women. Okay, and there's no malachim in the picture. These are sons of God. But the Septuagint's going to come in and call them angels because that's their world. They've moved on. Their angelology has developed. And so now they're going to have angels as that word for these gods that fool around. That makes sense? As complicated as I've made that, I could have probably made that much easier if I wanted to. So that's where we get the word angels from in Greek. But also, when we get down to the Nephilim, they translate that gigantes, which is giants. Okay, so that's where we get the idea that these are giant creatures. And of course, that makes sense because just like Lori's just shown us, when they go into Canaan, that's what they see, giants. That's their concern, that these things are that giants to us. Okay, so that's just a couple of what we would call Second Temple, right? Septuagint, First Enoch.
Can I ask you this, Jace, real quick?
Interpreters, yes.
In Gilgamesh, is the Enkidu, is that another giant, the kind of a giant figure?
Enkidu, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. Oh, that was it? Yep. Mm-hmm.
That was it, yeah.
Good. Okay. Okay, so in Enoch, back to Enoch, you saw these 3 passages here. Bind Azazel hand and foot. We saw this one right here. So this is, again, angelic cohabitation with women. resulting in gigantic or Nephilim, these gigantic offspring. And the angels who have sinned are now waiting for judgment. There are other passages, because I did my homework first, so I thought, you can see it this time. It would be hard to just read this to you if you can look at it. This is Jubilees. Book of Jubilees is probably my most enjoyable. I love reading the Book of Jubilees. It's just a cool retelling of Genesis and set into periods of years, right? Groups of 7 or groups of 50 Jubilee years. So the Book of Jubilees is a chronology of sabbatical cycles and Mosaic laws and all that stuff that's going to be in the regulations. And the regulations are given to the people of God even before they get to Sinai. So it assumes that they know some of these rules ahead of time, just a little bit of extra. And it's, again, last half of 2nd century. So, and again, it's argued. So it might be as early or as late as like 100s. So 100 years before Jesus, somewhere in there. Okay. And here it says, and he called his name Jared, for in his days the angels of the Lord descended on the earth, those who are named watchers. They should instruct the children of men, and that they should do judgment and uprightness on the earth. Okay, so now we've got a new word for the angel things. We've got watchers. Now, if you remember anything about the watchers, anybody see Russell Crowe's Noah? No one saw Russell Crowe, Noah? Oh my goodness, you guys are sad. Okay, well, it doesn't matter. But there's these weird rock creatures that show up in this movie, and they're freaky and awesome and such phenomenally imaginative creators who did all this. So, okay, let's see here. Can you still see everything on the screen? No, I can't. Yeah.
Yes.
So many people on the screen I can't see, and I don't like not being able to look in people's eyes. They say things. All right. So that's Jubilees. There's one other thing in Jubilees. So chapter 5 is going to follow with an expansion of Genesis 6, this particular section, where the Watchers cohabitate with the women and the offspring produced are giants. And we don't hear anything. They don't name like Azazel and Semishah, like they don't name them, but we get the idea. God's response to their sin is described in this next passage right here. And against the angels whom he had sent upon the earth, he was exceedingly wroth, and he gave command to root them out of all their dominion. And he made us, one of the good angels that's speaking there, bind them in the depths of the earth. And behold, they are bound in the midst of them and are kept separate. Okay. So again, that being kept. So remember that. We've got a lot about being kept.
He's pretty mad at him.
Yeah. I mean, it says he is exceedingly wroth. So yeah, that's pretty significant. That means really ticked. Kind of English of that. And then I put together some other pseudepigraphy here. So like you can go to 2nd Enoch, but 2nd Enoch is pretty late. You can go to 2nd Baruch. All books we talked about. Remember, that's why I'm bringing them up. Otherwise, it's not worth it for your time. But I'm trying to keep that other stuff in your head still. 2nd Baruch, and they mention Genesis 6 and the angels being punished by torment and always under the earth in chains, or not all of them, but Baruch mentions the angels being kept in chains. And then we got the testament of the 12 patriarchs. I didn't write these down, and I didn't quote them because I just didn't want to bore you with every single thing in here. But it's again cohabitation with the humans. But it's an interesting thing where it looks like the angels may be spiritually influencing them, but not physically doing anything. So that maybe it's humans having relations, but they've been possessed or something like that. So it's a weird one. And I just chose not to put it there. Let's see, where do I start putting? Put Testament of Reuben. Where is my Testament of Reuben? Okay, here's Testament of Reuben. It says, flee therefore fornication, my children, and command your wives and your daughters that they adorn not their heads and faces to deceive the mind, because every woman who uses these wiles hath been reserved for eternal punishment. Do you hear this, ladies? Do I need to read that again? You floozies who are putting makeup on and jewelry. Yep, here it is. You have been reserved for eternal punishment. Thus they allured the watchers who were before the flood. For as these continually beheld them, they lusted after them, and they conceived the act in their mind. For they changed themselves into the shape of men, and appeared to them when they were in with their husbands. And the women, lusting in their minds after their forms, gave birth to giants. For the watchers appeared to them as reaching even unto the heavens. So basically, they're hanging out in the room with their husbands, but the women are lusting after the angel creature things. And so that means when they conceive, they have these giants that apparently reach all the way into heaven. Like, these are some big old giants. Okay, they're not some like 9-foot giants. These are big giants. Okay, so at least it's fun story. Oh, I didn't pull up the rest of it for you to be able to read. Sorry about that. All right, so here's Testament of Naphtali. Gentiles went astray and forsook the Lord, and changed their order, and obeyed stocks and stones and spirits of deceit. But ye shall not be so, my children, recognizing in the firmament and the earth and in the sea and in all the created things, the Lord made all things, that ye become not as Sodom, which changed the order of nature. Okay, now we got connection with Sodom, which is coming in our very next verse, right? That changed the order of nature. In like manner, the watchers also changed the order of their nature, whom the Lord cursed at the flood, on whose account he made the earth without inhabitants and fruitless. All right, so I found this one incredibly fascinating. Jude is connecting these two, and now so is Naphtali. All right, this is just a cool passage where these two are brought together. I don't know exactly what to do with all that, but when we talk about Sodom, we'll want to remember that this connection. Lori's already made the connection with the one ahead of it. So these three stories have some kind of connection in the minds of Jude's listeners. Like, they know that these stories are connected, or at least other things that they've read have connected these stories before. So it's not strange that Jude would use these three completely different stories, because they have something that connects them. Okay, so Qumran, there's a whole bunch of them. I just quoted the Damascus document here, even if I spelled it wrong. Sorry about that. For through them great men have gone astray, and mighty heroes have stumbled from former times until now, because they walked in the stubbornness of their heart. The heavenly watchers fell. They were caught because they did not keep the commandments of God, and their sons also fell, who were tall as cedar trees, and whose bodies were like mountains. We're getting descriptions of these giants now. These are big boys. Okay, so that's all coming from the Dead Sea Scrolls. And again, there's several different Dead Sea Scrolls that mention them, but the CD, or the Damascus document, is the most well-known of them. Let's see, who else do I got? I got Philo. I just have a few more here. So Philo's has several different works, but he's got one called On the Giants. And Philo is he like lives at the time of Jesus, so he's there for all of that stuff. He's right around that same time, so 20 BC to 50 AD. And he's quoting the old Greek version, so he's reading Septuagint and working from that, as are most of the New Testament authors, right? They're not quoting Hebrew, they're quoting Greek almost always, which is interesting, because what they're doing is they're reading an interpreted Bible already. Does that make sense? They're not reading the Hebrew manuscripts. They're reading someone else who's translated it into English and played with it. Like, instead of saying sons of men, it said angels. Instead of it saying Nephilim, it said giants. That's what the New Testament people are generally reading. They're reading these interpreted Bible already. So Philo is going to say, so then it is no myth at all of giants that he, Moses, sets before us. Rather, he wishes to show you that some men are earthborn, some heaven-born, and some God-born. Okay, probably talking about these same giants from Genesis 6:1-4. And Philo is more of a philosopher, so he's going to go into a whole bunch of other things and take this in a weird direction, and we don't need to deal with that. Josephus is probably lives right after Jesus. So for the century or so after him, or 70 years after him. And he says this: for many angels of God now consorted with women and begat sons who were overbearing and disdainful of every virtue. Such confidence had they in their strength. In fact, the deeds that tradition ascribes to them resemble the audacious exploits told by the Greeks of the giants. Okay, so Josephus also believes these creatures came from heaven and did that. This stuff. Here's a Targum. Remember, Targums are Aramaic translations, and whenever they translate, they elaborate. Some Targums more than others. So Targum Pseudo Jonathan is incredibly elaborative. It goes in. It'll translate these three words, and it'll translate these three words at the end, and in between, it will add a whole bunch of commentary to help you understand what that verse is about, or just add cool stuff to make it a whole lot more fun. All right, so here's Targum Pseudo Jonathan. Oh, by the way, I should say, these Targums are way late. Like any extant versions we have of Targums are going to be medieval, so post Augustine. All right, way after a lot of other stuff has happened. But they're coming from like we expect that they are as old as New Testament books. We expect they're coming around the same time. We just don't have any copies. So, which isn't strange. We don't have any copies of the Old Testament. They're very old either, right? Sea Scrolls is all we got. And that's only in the last 50 years. Or 70 years, I guess. Okay. Targum Pseudo Jonathan. And it came to pass when the sons of men began to multiply on the face of the ground, and beautiful daughters were born to them, that the sons of the great ones saw that the daughters of men were beautiful, with eyes painted and hair curled, walking in nakedness of flesh. And they conceived lustful thoughts, and they took them wives of all they chose. Shemhazai and Azael fell from the heavens and were on earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of the great ones came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them. The same are called men of the world, the men of renown. Okay, so you can see how it was Genesis 6. It's translating Genesis 6, but it added an awful lot, didn't it? Gave names of a couple of people. It told them that their hair was curled and they were painted, they had makeup on, and so I find that fascinating. And then we've got the early Christian references. Once you get to this period, so this would be what we call the patristics, the early church fathers. When you get here, now these interpretations start to vary off. Okay, because the early church fathers were a little bit unhappy about the fact that these might be supernatural beings. All right, they did not like that interpretation. It didn't fit the world view that they held, and so we've got a lot of disagreement going on here. So I could show you that there are others. When I say a lot, we don't have tons of church fathers, but I just gave you a few that are in the same place as all of these before it. So this is Justin Martyr in his second apology. God, when he had made the whole world and subjected things earthly to man, committed the care of men and of all things under heaven to angels whom he appointed over them. But the angels transgressed this appointment, were captivated by the love of women, and begat children who are those that are called demons. Okay, so we've moved into demons now. From New Testament on, that's a word that we use now for these fallen angels. Clement of Alexandria, the angels who had obtained the superior rank, having sunk into pleasures, told, I can't read my own writing, told to the women the secrets should come to their knowledge. And Tertullian, those angels, the deserters from God, the lovers of women, revealed astrology to mankind. And Tertullian also says that Paul's reference to spiritual wickedness in the heavenlies in Ephesians 6 doesn't refer to Marcion. He's arguing against Marcion's wicked creator God, but to the angels that are entrapped, that were entrapped into sin by the daughters of men. Okay, so there are a bunch more. All you got to do is Google this, and you can probably find most of this in a few hours yourself if you want to, and a whole lot more. Okay, so the point.
Hang on a second.
Yeah, go.
So it seemed like I heard 25 folks saying that it's the angels' fault, and then this other last one said it was the daughters of the men. Am I hearing that right?
Yes,
It's
that's
their
right.
fault.
Yeah, the daughters,
Just
yeah,
checking.
it was the women that were the sinful ones here. Yeah. Well, they seduced the angels. So the angels are still the problem, right? They shouldn't have transgressed. But yeah,
Okay,
at least
keeping
Tertullian
score.
wants to blame the women. Yeah. Good catch.
Thanks.
That's very interesting, isn't it? Okay, so that's what's going on. Thoughts? Here we've got Jude. Jude says very simply, and the angels who did not keep their own position but left their proper dwelling, he has kept in eternal chains in deepest darkness for the judgment of the great day. All right, so let's talk about that. What does that mean? What's going on?
Two things I noticed earlier.
Good.
One is
Okay.
that there was the use of the word Gentiles in a context that would seem to have been Old Testament
Remember which one it was?
early. And it's right at the first of there.
So this is testament of Naphtali. The Gentiles went astray and forsook the Lord and changed their order and obeyed stocks and stones, spirits of deceit. But you shall not be so, my children, that is Israel, recognizing in the firmament and the earth and in the sea and all the created things the Lord who made all things. You don't become like Sodom, which changed the order of nature. So the Gentiles, the non-loved by God people, right? Those people forsook the Lord and changed their order. That is, they started worshiping the wrong things. They put people or other things in the place of God, just like Sodom did.
So the other thing I noticed is it looks like there's other parts of creation that are not intended to mix with mankind. And
Okay.
it's the mixing that's against the rules that causes all of the problem.
Yep.
Although there's not enough detail there to define it well and know what's really going on. So I'm not sure what we should do with it, other than obey what we've been given for our order.
Yeah, and let's remember. So mixing and order are two really key words that you use there, right? And if you remember any of the Levitical laws, a lot of them are against mixing as well. So mixing is the problem. Don't go beyond the order that you were given. So don't wear two different fabrics for your clothes. Don't mix two different kinds of seeds in your garden, right? Everything has to be separate. Everything has order. And remember, this is true right from the beginning. This is Genesis 1, isn't it? Right? We've got disorder, right? In Genesis chapter 1, verse 2, darkness is over the face of the deep, right? And the Spirit of God comes and starts separating and making order. So God is a God of order, of Ma'at in Egyptian, and everything else is about chaos and coming in and sowing discord and having different fabrics together or different seeds come up together. So yes, don't mix. That's the deal. So if we're Christians, we don't necessarily have to abide by their mixing. Maybe we could say, it seems like that's what you're saying, Tom. We got to figure out what our order is. Is that what you were saying? Sorta. Yeah, you don't want to commit to that too much, do you? Because you're like, wait a second. Now, if I say that we don't have to follow that one, then where's that going to lead me? But none of us do follow that. Like all of you are probably wearing shirts that are mixed right now. That's just the norm. That's how normal things are done. Maybe some of you have all 100% cotton, but most people mix them in some way. And you've got different fabrics, and you eat all kinds of fish and foods that they're not allowed to eat.
You say
Right, so
Deuteronomy 19, right? Where it's talking about tattoos right before that, 1919 or something like that.
Okay, so yeah, and some of you have tattoos. I mean, I won't say any words, Josh, Travis.
I was thinking about Satan, and I was thinking about there doesn't seem to be any like head demon angel type figure. So I'm not. And then I also thought about when you were talking about the strong man being binded or bound. That the chains motif with these angels, how they're in chains, and how Jesus comes and binds the strong man so he can plunder. Yeah, so those are the two things that come. I know it's kind of obscure, but that's where my mind went.
Yeah, they come. Yeah.
And
But
yeah,
yeah.
I just wanted to know. Doesn't seem like there's any head demon, or I don't see any Satan figure here where there's like a lead. And also one more thing, it seems like we're half ape, half angel.
You brought that up many times. You like that. You like that particular
Yeah.
analogy.
I
Happy,
love that. Yeah. Like this is like our godlike nature, like it my mind goes crazy with evolution and our god nature and the dichotomy between the reptilian brain and the neocortex, and all these things happen, and I go straight to Genesis 6, and anyways, that's just probably too heretical out of the box for everybody here, so I'm sorry.
Yeah, we'll move on. Yep. Go ahead, Lori.
I'm seeing also like a transition from divine beings are among us to divine beings that need to be very separate from us throughout
Yeah.
the Bible.
Yep.
And I see that in the writings that you presented to us as well. Like, like earlier, it's like, okay, yeah, they're here. Now it's like, no, you cannot. I'm not sure what I'm trying to say, but I see more, they're with us and no, they're separate kind of thing.
Right. So like the writings that I was showing you were all like Second Temple stuff. So you're saying that's real
Right.
late. And by that
Yes.
point, they have this order in mind. But all throughout the Old
Yes.
Testament, they seem to be there. Malachim are hanging out. They do things.
Yeah.
We've got Abraham having 3 visitors, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Destroying Sodom and Gomorrah. Right. So the question is, what is the transgression? Is the transgression that they came to earth at all? Or is the transgression that they created a new species of creatures? Like, is it a sexual transgression that's happened? Right. That's the real problem, that they've intermingled with humanity. Not that they've intermingled like they live in the same place necessarily, but that they've truly intermingled in the deepest possible sense.
Yeah.
Right. So
appears to me that their transgression was that they left their place of authority.
yeah, that's right. Yep. Yep. This is their realm. This is where they're in charge of, they're in control of, and they came down and messed that up.
Earlier, it said that they disturbed the natural order of things, God's natural order of things. One of the readings you had. So this is naturally supposed to be this way, and it was disturbed.
That's right. So
in many different places.
And let's hold on to that word natural. I know other people want to talk right now, but that word natural is very important to a lot of New Testament verses, right? Because Paul is going to argue this goes against nature on a regular basis. So he's going to say, I can see from nature that this is not right, right? So he's going to make certain arguments about women's hair. From nature, this doesn't work. Or women being speaking and things like that. From nature, we know that this happens, right? And we're going to have to make some determinations as Christians in today's world, whether Paul's argument from nature is a legitimate one.
Is
right?
it cultural or is it, yeah.
Right. So, but that's a really good point. I think, Michael, were you still talking? Sorry, I saw your mouth still moving when Josh jumped in.
So we get this story in Genesis, and it sounds like mythology to me. And then it gets repeated at Enoch and all these other writers, all the way down to Jude. Does that give it more credibility? Or is just one writer repeating what the other writer wrote before him?
Okay, you're asking it because I showed you a whole bunch of different sections.
Yes.
The fact that I have all of these make the interpretation better, or are they all just repeating what someone else said?
Does it give it more credibility? That it's a fact rather than a myth.
Okay, so I was afraid that you were going to ask credibility meant historicity. So I don't think historicity means credible. So I would say that their interpretation is a legitimate interpretation. That's how they understood that passage. they're using that passage to make an argument for their time.
Yes.
They're not
Yes.
necessarily saying that that happened in history like that, but they're using what people may have thought happened in history. Like even during the time of Genesis, like whenever this is written, again, you guys know that I think it's considerably later than Moses, but so they're looking at that and they're saying, yeah, I'm sure many people thought that angels literally intermingled with daughters of men, like literally, and that there were actually giants in the land. That's a literal thing. And I'm not going to discount it. I don't have any idea. I wasn't there. So unless I got a time machine, I'm not going to get there. But that's not the only way literature works. It's not only designed to tell you what happens in history. It's also designed to make rhetorical points by using mythology. And we've talked a lot of times about myth here being more than true, right? It's not just historical, or it might not be historical at all, but it might give you more information than you need that's really true because it's telling you a bigger story, something larger. So this would be the larger story in Genesis would be, God kind of just like, all right, I've had it. Like I can't do anything more. And I've used this illustration more than once, but where he's just like cats and dogs living together, mass hysteria, right? Everything is as bad as it can possibly be. Or we might say, cats and, it's raining cats and dogs. Like it's as bad as it can be. And so now we're going to show you why God said, I am not just destroying mankind, right, in this, which is a big question, but I am cosmically restarting the world. Like everything has gone wrong, so I'm going to start over. So he's not just flooding the earth. Remember, it's the heavens themselves that collapse into the earth. And so everything goes back to Genesis 1, verse 2, in that great Hebrew phrase of chaos, which we call, what's that great? Close? I think maybe you said it. I don't even know. Yeah. Tohu vabohu, right? Tohu vabohu. This chaotic world has returned. Okay, so I think that's what Genesis is doing. I think that's what the author is trying to do, is bring us there. But I think these New Testament authors and these Second Temple interpreters outside of the New Testament are doing more with this. They're talking about these boundaries that were transgressed because Jude wants to give you some rules. He wants you to know that there are rules. We can't just do whatever we want.
Yeah, but isn't this it's the same story, because he's talking about credibility, and this is being translated via oral tradition, and it's going around. And so these different myths, Michael's talking about the myth, the original myth, it's being diluted or changed to fit the narrative of this culture. And so these people are doing the same thing that people have been doing, except for instead of orally doing it, transmitting it, they're doing it via text writing. Yeah. So they're using it to fit their narrative.
Exactly.
We
do that with Aesop's fables. I mean, those have been around for thousands of years, and you'll get different versions, but the point,
it speaks to a truth, right? It speaks to it. Yeah, it speaks to it. So the truth is that something happened, something supernatural happened, where, you can even go, I'm going to argue that, something supernatural happened where something came out of the sky. You can say ancient alien. You can go crazy with this thing. You can say, what happened? Are this aliens? What is this? What is this going on here?
And there are interpreters who do exactly that with Genesis 6, talk about aliens and stuff like that. Okay.
Which I don't adhere to, by the way. I'm not going that far, but.
So what we're trying to do is figure out what actually happened. And I would just say, I don't know that's not in our pay grade to try and figure out what actually happened. What we're trying to figure out, because I'm not a historian, I don't know if you are either. What we're trying to figure out is, what is the author trying to do with this literature in Genesis? And then what is the author of later on, what are they trying to do with it? Right? If you remember the hermeneutics thing, there's the little circle of event, and then there's a larger circle of what the author is doing with that. And then there's other interpreters, it's the larger story. And then only then we get the big one, which is us, right? My AEIOU thing, event, author, others, us. And the others are these Second Temple interpreters interpreting Genesis, the author of Genesis, who is interpreting maybe if Michael's, what Michael's talking about, an event that happened. I'm just saying, I don't know about the event and don't care. Like maybe something happened, maybe it didn't. I don't know. Doesn't make any difference. Go ahead, Travis.
Isn't the first example in this with like the spies in Egypt? Like the second two examples we're on the middle one, but like
That's right.
they're sexual in nature. They're sexual in nature, but there's nothing sexual about the spies and the
Right.
report of the spies, is there?
I don't think so. But there is something possibly angelic about it. So then the question we've got to try and figure out, and I'll get back to this as I wrap all three of these stories together. But this first story is about getting the law, which I'll try to explain. And when God brings the law on the mountain and they decide that they're going to go their own way. So that's what we'll get to. And the angels are the ones who talk about, that are the ones who deliver the law. Second temple thinking. I'll show that to you. I promise. I've got the verses to show it all to you. I'm just trying to take it. I want to show you each story individually, and then I want to show you how they all cohere, which really helps you when you get to the Sodom and Gomorrah story. Because all we think about when we hear this is those bad homosexuals, if you're in an evangelical world, if you grew up in the same world I did, right? That's not what's going on in Jude, whether that's happening in Genesis or not. It's not what's happening in Jude. But something's happened, maybe sexually, in that passage. But we're not to that passage. That's next week. And we will talk within the next few weeks. We will talk about the question of homosexuality here that many of you have asked me to talk about. We will do a 1 week on it. So we will not get deep enough into that whole thing, but I want to show you there's only a few verses to talk about that, and then we'll discuss what we should do with those things.
So we should invite all of our friends to talk about sex next week.
That's right. Yes.
Is that next week?
Yes. Not just sex, same sex. Right. So
homosexuality.
That's right.
That's a hot topic.
It's a hot topic. I know. Yeah. Don't bring any of your friends, please, because
Sexual immorality in general.
Yes. Although Sodom and Gomorrah is what we think of course, is homosexuality.
So give it to us straight, Jace. What's going on here? I mean, what's going on with this passage? Why? I mean, what is this author Jude trying to tell everybody with these? Like, why is he throwing in the angels and the day of judgment? And
yeah, I feel like I've kind of we've already been going there. So I mean, I'll just be able to say it in like a sentence or two. But here's Jude's verse, right? The angels who did not keep their own position, but left their proper dwelling, he's kept in eternal chains in the deepest darkness to the judgment of that great day. So I think he's talking about Genesis 6. I think he's saying that they have been, because they transgressed the barrier that was put on them, right? That is the sexual barrier, the interacting with humankind in that way barrier. They did that, then he has punished them. Because remember what's happening. We're talking about people. He's trying to say, you've got people in your midst. The creepers have come into your midst, and they're doing things, and they're saying it's okay to be doing these things. And they're going to be punished. In fact, long time ago in history, it's already been predestined that they're going to be punished. Because they were punished. Here's a list. 1, 2, 3. They were all punished. Well, you're doing the same thing. You're going to be punished too. So he's just making his rhetorical argument. You are just like those people who were standing in Canaan and said, no way, God, we're not going to obey the law. You were just like the angels who said, screw you, God, we're not going to obey your law. We were just like the men in Sodom who said, we're going to do whatever we want with these angel creature men, right? We're going to do whatever we want. We're not going to obey your law. That's what it's going to end up being. Right, which is really simple. We just did a lot of work to come up with probably what you figured out just by reading those 3 verses. That's the big picture. But I wanted you to get the history because Jude is playing. He's playing in the Old Testament. That's what the New Testament authors are doing. They're playing. Right? Not just Jude, right? 1 Peter, Corinthians. Right? So 1 Peter, let's see, do I write? Oh, 2 Peter. 2 Peter 2:4. For if God did not spare angels when they sinned, but cast them into hell and committed them to the pits of darkness reserved for judgment. Okay. So that's the same passage. He didn't spare the angels when they sinned, so they got punished. So Peter's using the same argument to Jews. You better not do this stuff too. He didn't, he was serious. He even condemned his own angels that he made. Okay, 1 Corinthians is therefore the woman ought to have a symbol of authority on her head because of the angels. Okay, which is always a fascinating and insanely difficult passage, and I don't know how to interpret it. I didn't do my work on that one ahead of time. But apparently the angels are offended when women aren't submissive. Maybe in this. Remember where Paul lives.
I said, aren't you? I'm just.
I am. Yes, ladies. Yes. Make sure you wear your hair.
I'm sorry, that was a bad joke. I'm definitely not like that, ladies.
But and then you've got 1 Peter 3, for Christ also died for sins, that he might bring us to God, having been put to death in the flesh, but made alive in the spirit, in which he also went and made proclamation to the spirits now in prison, who once were disobedient when the patience of God kept waiting in the days of Noah. So again, these angels were put in prison. See, this is the myth. Again, whether it happened in history or not, doesn't matter. When I say myth, I just mean these are the stories of the gods, of the supernatural beings that everyone knows and is using to make their arguments for things. So that's all Jude's doing. He's reaching in there. So you might ask, whoever was talking about history in here, isn't there a passage, which there is, Matthew 22 or something like that, where the angels neither give or take in marriage, right? Anyone know where that one is? I feel like it's Matthew 22, but I could be wrong. Matthew.
They never taught us that one in Sunday school, so I don't know.
No, the angels don't give or take in marriage.
No, I don't remember that story.
It's
Oh my
the
goodness, it
story
is.
where the guy says, well, this guy's wife dies and he marries the next brother marries her, and at the end.
Oh, is that the same one? Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I heard that one.
Yeah, now
That
there were
is
7
fine.
brothers among us. The first married and died childless, leaving the widow to his brother. The second did the same, the third down to the 7th. Last of all, the woman herself died in the resurrection. Then whose wife of the 7 will she be? For all of them had married her. And Jesus answered them, you're wrong, because you know neither the scriptures nor the power of God. For in the resurrection they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are like the angels in heaven. So they can't get married according to Jesus. Seems to be their nature. So we're not going to be married in heaven. You should know that according to Jesus. And we can't be because we are, the illustration is just like the angels can't get married, neither can you. So something will be similar to the angels in that sense, that you won't be able to do it.
This screams
now,
for celibacy and like sexual morality, not immorality. To me, it leads to like sexual, like sin being in most spiritual milieus, sexual sin is frowned upon. Like it's like one of the biggest sins, whether that be masturbation or sexual immorality. But it argues for celibacy in general. Like the ascetics have it right. What happened here? Okay.
All right, it's changed. It took you didn't need to see all that stuff anymore. It's wasting some space.
Anyways.
Some of those restrictions may be related to multi-dimensions that we don't have access to yet. The math works for more than 3 dimensions.
Oh, sure. Yeah, Caltech astrophysicist Hugh Ross has been talking about that for 30 years, probably, that there's 21 or something different dimensions.
Vector tensor analysis, upper division math.
Yeah. Anything past pluses and minuses, I'm lost. So.
And it's biblical that God reigns across time and space. So a few more dimensions is not outside his capability. And the point is that how do we in our limited bodies get to heaven quickly, and how do angels zip around and do God's work? That's probably dimensional in nature.
There's a really good movie called Interstellar. At the end, he goes into a black hole, and at the end, you can see it's the realm of possibilities. It's almost like the realm of the forms. It's so intriguing and speaks to what I think you're saying, Tom.
Yeah, I watched that movie so many times. Every time, I'm just like, I'm still trying intellectually to understand what's happening. It's so good. I love that movie. It's brilliant. Yeah. Again, Tom, you are, as always, trying to figure out what the reality is behind all of this stuff. And I don't know how all that works, whether we get to zip around interdimensionality, all that stuff, or what it even means to be in heaven. Those are just not questions that I have of scripture, that I don't think they have, but I understand why we all want to answer them. I just don't know how to wrestle with this.
Neither do I. The thing is, science is defined as the study of God's creation. And it's natural for us to seek to do that, but it's also staying in our lane to not go beyond where we can understand.
Ooh, so maybe here's an argument for us to stay in our with our boundaries.
Right.
Of course, these boundaries are not the boundaries that Jude is talking about, intellectual ones or metaphysical ones. He's simply talking about probably sexual ones, or at least whatever our boundaries are, whatever our ethical boundaries are, which is a conversation we're going to have. We had this a couple of years ago. We had a pretty cool discussion on ethics and law and how it worked. It's been long enough now that we'll probably open it up again, because most of you weren't even here. But, what can we do according to, like, what does the Bible allow us to do? Fornication, homosexuality, those kinds of things. What is it saying? And is Jude our authority? Do we need to listen to what Jude is saying in this? Yeah. So, yeah. Anybody else have anything else they want to say? I'm not going to jump into the next section, but does it make sense what Jude is trying to do right now? Where he's headed?
Yeah.
So next week, what he's going to do is he's going to head into the Sodom and Gomorrah passage, right? But you are not. Oh, sorry. No, I'm totally in Matthew. I'm not even in Jude anymore. Here we go. Likewise, Sodom and Gomorrah and the surrounding cities, which in the same manner as they indulged in sexual immorality and pursued unnatural lust, serve as an example by undergoing a punishment of eternal fire. So we're going to have to ask questions like, in the surroundings, which in the same manner as they, who are the they in the same manner as, feels like it's who we just talked about, right? The last two people that we've talked about, that they indulged in sexual immorality, which certainly fits the passage we're talking about now, but doesn't, as Travis said earlier, doesn't really fit that other one. And, as they're going into Canaan, sexual morality one, pursuing unnatural lust. So what kind of unnatural is this? I mean, in our minds, we know what sodomy is. Comes from the word Sodom. That makes the most sense here. Is that what he's doing? Is he saying, stay away from homosexuality?
Using some lust that's natural and therefore okay. Is that what you're saying?
Maybe so. I mean, natural. Yeah. Remember, Paul's a big fan of natural, what nature teaches us. So that might be it.
Yeah, how are we going to procreate if we don't have an attraction?
Right. Yeah, I mean, I would assume some lust is pretty good. Those of you with spouses, at least. And then we can argue for other things, maybe. I don't know. But again, the end of it is the punishment and eternal fire. So, and then verse 8 is going to be our pivot point. So we got 1, 2, 3 illustrations. Then verse 8. Yet in the same way, these dreamers also defile the flesh, reject authority, and slander the glorious ones. So 3 things that they do. We want to ask the question, are these 3 separate things, defiling the flesh, rejecting authority, and slandering the glorious ones? Or is that all the same thing? Do they do all that? And that's all one thing that they're doing. And then 9 and 10 are going to give you 3 more examples of Michael and Moses and rebuking, and then it's going to say, woe to them. Dress control, body. Yes, good. Nice. I don't have my my notes up. Oh, there's lots of chats on here. Sorry, everyone. I wasn't looking at them before. Thankful forgiveness of the cause. Nice. All right. All good ones. Okay.
It's amazing how we've been blaming women for men's lack of controlling themselves for 2,000 years. How far we've come.
Yep. Fair. Yep. Okay. Sounds like we're good. I don't need to say more. We can end 4 minutes.
So can you? We've got
Like-
4 minutes. Can you
Okay.
explain how just like in 4 minutes, how are there angels in the spy story? Because I don't see them at all. So, because
Yeah.
like, how are you going to connect it?
No, I want to get to that once you have all three in there. So the angels, I mean, in simple forms is they're given the law of God. So when God gives a law, it comes through the angels. So when when they're told to do things, it is mediated through angels, according to many New Testament verses. So I just want to show you that might be a connection here. It doesn't have to be, but some people are saying that because this is one of the laws that are given. So let's see, I got to find.
Like the story of the spies is God says, go into Canaan. Moses said, I'm going to send some spies.
Yep.
Like there's no law giving there.
Well, the spies saw giants.
Right, and we connected that. Lori earlier, I think, made the connection with the Giants here.
But they were rebelling the whole way through the 40 years.
Right.
At every step.
Yep. It'll be much. I have Matthew 10, Luke 10, Ezekiel 16, Hebrews 13. It'll be much easier for you to let me do this in the order it comes. Otherwise, I'm going to end up spending the next 10 minutes talking about this. So it's just not going to work for me, Travis. Or I can just talk to you afterwards if you want for a few minutes. And it's not a significant thing. In the end, if you don't see it and you don't like it, it's not going to matter. The point is that all of them are transgressing the commands of God, whether it's to do with angels in every case or not. But some people have seen an angel's connection.
No, I see that. Like God said to do this and they didn't do that. God said to do this and they didn't do that. God said, it's all like very simple, just like God said and they didn't.
Yep.
One example of the angels and or God dispensing the rules is it's thought that pre-incarnate Christ and two angels are what approached Abraham's tent at the Oaks of Mamre on their way to dispense judgment to Sodom and Gomorrah. And that's when Abraham argued for forgiveness or grace for his nephew Lot and family.
Okay. I'm trying to make no comments because we're out of time. So I'm just letting you say your thing and then stop from talking more.
It's on the table now, I guess.
Okay. Yeah. So I don't think I'm going to be able to do much better, Travis, except for once I show you a whole bunch of those verses and say, that after the angels give the law, that they're known to follow the people of God and to be watching them to make sure that they obey the laws. And when they don't obey the laws, then it's like slandering them. It's like rejecting the angels. So it's not any deeper than that.
Well, angels aren't supposed to have sex with humans, and Mary says that women shouldn't have sex with a mailman. That's what
Mary
she calls
says-
it.
Say that again.
Don't sleep with the mailman.
Okay, good. Good. Yep, that's Mary. Nice job, Mary.
Angels as messengers, the deliverer of the
Messengers, mailmen. That's right, delivering messengers.
That's
Thank you
good.
for making the connection because it wasn't fully in my head yet. So thank you. for
Well,
that.
I
I'm
wanted to
not
see
gonna
it
draw
real
any
loud.
pictures.
Thank you. We appreciate
It's
that
already
too.
embedded in my mind here. We got it. So
All
next
right.
week we're talking about sex.
We're talking about sex. Yep.
All
Bring
right.
all your
I'm
friends.
inviting- I'm
Talk about
inviting all
sex.
my friends. All right.
All right, and we'll do the same thing. We'll look back at Sodom and Gomorrah and look at the different stories that how people interpreted those kinds of stories. Yeah, probably not to the same extent that I did today because that was too much. But we'll say a few things about it.
Jace,
All right, 9:16. Yeah.
I need 30 seconds to ask about Zoom. Has nothing to do with this.
Okay. Good. Let's go ahead and stop the recording and say goodbye to everybody, and then.
Yeah.